K-How.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes!
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
He's a great guy.
Now, Ross Kaminsky on Denver's talk station, 630 K-How.
All right, good morning. It's Tuesday. I'm Ross. Thanks for starting your day with me. Boy, we got a very, very interesting show coming up for you today. Some fascinating guests, including Kyle Mills, who is the guy who's been writing the Vince Flynn, Mitch Rapp novels since Vince Flynn passed away in, I think it was 2013. And his new book is called Total Power, and I actually just finished it yesterday, and it's wonderful. And then that's at 7:05. And 8:05, we've got Terry Virts, who is a really fascinating dude. He was commander of the International Space Station. He piloted the Space Shuttle Endeavour, and he's got a new book called How to Astronaut, an insider's guide to leaving planet Earth. But this book is very, it's non-technical. It's just hilarious. He talks about how, just as an example, like the most important thing, he says, or one of the most important things about being a military high-speed jet test pilot is to sound as cool as possible when you're talking on the radio between airplanes and between the airplane and the base. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got a lot of stuff to do. I don't know if you want to play along early in the morning, but I'll throw this out there. Today is my wife Kristen's birthday, and it's a big birthday. I won't say just which one it is, but it's a big birthday. It's one of those ones with a round, literally round number on the end. So, if you would like to say happy birthday to my wife, please email me at ross@khow.com your happy birthday note to my wife, Kristen. It's Kristen, and I'll pass them along to her later in the day. If you feel like playing along, it's totally fine if you don't, of course, because she's not your wife. I watched the Broncos game. I watched the first half last night. I watched the second half this morning. In fact, I just finished watching the second half about 3 minutes ago. It was an unfortunate end. The Broncos didn't play all that well. Neither did the other team, the Tennessee Titans, but the Broncos ended up losing. Well, we'll get through it. I got a text message late last night from a listener saying, Ross, since I moved to Colorado in 1982, I've loved the Broncos, but I can't forgive 18 kneeling during the anthem. They could have stayed in the locker room. I'm done, he says. I get it. I absolutely get it. I didn't talk much about this yesterday. I'll take just a minute or so on it now. I'm torn on this, but not equally torn, right? On the one hand, I get that these are people who, as Americans, and many of whom African Americans who grew up with a certain experience regarding race relations in the United States, have a different perspective on these issues than I do. And I also get that they have every right to express their opinions, but that doesn't mean they have to express them while I'm tuning in to watch a football game. Of course, the other side, right? I feel like the three-handed economist that we talk about from time to time. On the one hand, on the other hand, on the other hand, right? So on the other hand, I think, or maybe it's the other. They might say, look, this is when the most people are watching us. This is when we can really make a difference, send a message, is when millions of people see us on TV. Yeah, we can go out into our local communities during the week and when we're not on a TV camera and try to make a difference that way, but it's just not the same as doing something while literally millions of people are watching us on TV. My personal feeling about it is I love watching the NFL as a distraction from everything else that's going on in the world, right? whether it's a distraction from our domestic politics in a presidential election, a distraction from stuff going on in the rest of the world, a distraction from the virus, a distraction from whatever. And for me, it really does lessen the enjoyment of the game if I'm watching political protest, whether or not I support the underlying thought process behind what they're protesting. And I get it. I hear these folks say all the time, I hear the players say, we're not really protesting against the national anthem. We're just taking that time to protest against racial injustice in the U.S. Look, I get it. And I have some sympathy to that, even though I didn't grow up, unlike Steve Martin in one of my favorite movies, I did not grow up as a poor black child. I didn't, and I don't share their experience, and I don't claim that their experience is not valid or something like that just because I don't share it. But what I do say is I just enjoy it less when I'm subjected to that stuff, when all I want to do is watch a game. I'll say one other thing on this. I think probably a large majority of those who listen to this show feel similarly, I'm not going to say identically, feel similarly to how I feel about it, which is to say, within some range of intensity of your own feelings, you don't want to see NFL players kneeling or standing with a fist in the air during the national anthem when you just want to watch a game. And I fully understand many listeners who say, look, I'm done, as this listener said to me by text at 11:40 last night. I get it. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm done. I'm going to try to power my way through and just ignore it. In fact, and this does kind of bum me out. Yesterday, so I recorded the game and started watching it just 15 or 20 minutes after it started. And they started with the national anthem. And I listened to the first few bars. I saw some players kneeling, a lot more Broncos players than Titans players kneeling. And then I just fast forwarded through the rest of it to get to the start of the game. And I do like hearing the national anthem. I don't think listening to a song is what makes me a patriotic person or a good person. I don't think even standing for a song or putting my hand over my heart or taking my hat off, wasn't wearing a hat at home, last night, but I don't think that stuff is what makes me a good person. I don't think that skipping the anthem makes me a bad person if now they've made the anthem in that environment less enjoyable for me, but I am a little cranky that they've made the anthem less enjoyable for me. So I'm not giving up on them just yet. I will say, though, that you may recall, and we've talked about this a couple of times, when Colin Kaepernick was hired by Nike to represent them, and they have a lot of celebrity endorsers, and they'll just put up, a black and white poster of that person's face with some theoretically inspiring message underneath it. And I don't remember what it was with Kaepernick's face, but, something about commitment, I think. And you may recall, we talked about this when it was going on, and there was this big blow up, and I think Rush Limbaugh talked about it, and most conservative talk show hosts talked about it, and Nike stock went down a few percent the next day, which was tens of millions of dollars of value in the company's stock. And what I said on the air was, this is a buying opportunity. Nike is much smarter than every conservative talk show host combined. I don't mean that a big company can never make a mistake. But if you were just going to have to bet on who knows what's better for Nike's business between Rush Limbaugh and Nike's CEO, that's not really a hard bet. And part of the thing that people of all political stripes do from time to time, conservatives do it, liberals do it, everybody does it, is to assume that way more people are like them than actually are like them. So what I said on the show back at the time was, look, Nike's target market is not primarily Rush Limbaugh listeners or Ross Kaminsky listeners even. Their target market is very different. A lot more African Americans in Nike's target market than listen to talk radio. A lot younger audience than typically listens to talk radio. A lot more, I don't want to say socially conscious because that makes it sound a little more positive than I think it is, but a lot more down with these kind of messages than talk radio listeners usually are. And I said, this is a buying opportunity in Nike stock. It shouldn't have gone down on that news. And Nike stock went up the day after that and just kept going up, and that was a tremendous buying opportunity. So bringing it back to the NFL, I've seen several polls now that show typically somewhere between 60 and 65% of NFL fans are okay with the players kneeling on the sidelines. And I don't know how many people in those polls were undecided, but it's more or less 2-1 in favor. So keep that in mind when you get annoyed or angry or whatever your reaction is to the players kneeling on the sidelines, if you're even still watching. Keep in mind as you think to yourself, I can't believe the NFL is blowing up their business like this. They're in a pretty tough spot because the NFL has lots of people, lots of fans with strong feelings on both sides. But the bottom line is they've got about twice as many fans who support or at least tolerate without any real issue players kneeling versus people like me and maybe like you who really wish they weren't doing that. They are sort of in a no-win situation. I'm sure they would prefer to not have that kind of controversy at all, but here we are. Here we are. What are you going to do? Anyway, I have to say I didn't watch a lot of football games on Sunday, but I did not see any team with as many players kneeling as the Broncos had on Monday night. And it did kind of bum me out. Yeah. Again, not because I disrespect what the players care about, but rather because it makes me feel that the players, are disrespecting what I care about. And frankly, what I care about is I watch football to be entertained. I don't watch football to be political. All right, moving on. Another football story, but not the same kind of football story. Over at thehill.com, they're reporting that Joe Biden, former VP, candidate for president, has bought time for an advertisement during every single NFL game going up through the Sunday or the Monday before the presidential election. Wow. This was, I think, originally reported by NPR on Sunday. They've bought at least one advertising slot for every game between now and the election. Very interesting. Probably pretty smart. In a way, you think, first of all, there's probably however many thousands more people watching the game on TV who won't be at a game, right? Instead of 70,000 people at Broncos Stadium, in a couple of weeks, there'll be just under 6,000. So there'll be tens of thousands of people more probably watching every single game on TV. And frankly, The people who won't be watching it because of all the stuff I talked about a minute ago, they're not Biden voters anyway. So he's going to be reaching, Democrats who he needs to reach just to motivate them to actually turn out and vote, because he is such an uninspiring, boring, blech kind of candidate. And then also he'll be reaching kind of the moderates, just the, suburban football watchers who, are maybe still just loosely attached one way or another, trying to make sure that if they're leaning his way, they stick with him, or if they're leaning Trump's way, maybe he can peel them away, or if there's some part of the undecided electorate that we talked about yesterday, maybe he can grab them that way. It'll be very interesting to see if the Trump campaign responds in kind. It's unclear that the Trump campaign has the money to keep up with Biden on everything. The Trump campaign does have money, but not as much as Biden right now. So we'll have to see what it is that they are able to keep up with. I wanted to spend a little time today talking about some election stuff. And what I want to do right now is just share with you a few questions and answers. You remember we had Judd Choate on the show last week, the director of elections for the state of Colorado. And some listeners got some questions to me either while I was talking to him that I didn't have time to ask him, or just after I was talking to him. And I picked a few of these questions and sent them to him, and he emailed back some answers that I want to share with you. First, is the 10 ballot limit on ballot harvesting enforceable or detectable? Judd's answer, not really. Like many states, the 10 ballot provision lays out a restriction that a law enforcement officer would find difficult to enforce. That doesn't mean it's legal. However, it's still against the law to collect more than 10 ballots in a given election. We just don't have a ready way to enforce it. I mean, if you can't enforce it, then maybe ballot harvesting should be illegal. And that way, if you see anyone carrying someone else's ballot other than, let's say, someone they live with, then that would be a problem. Or someone they're related to, then that would be a problem. Let's see. Let me do one more, and then I'm going to continue with some important election stuff after the break. The question, what would you like to, this is my question, what would you like to say to my listeners about people who hear President Trump's exhortation to vote by mail and then again in person in case your mail-in ballot wasn't tabulated? He said the president is encouraging voter fraud. Vote one ballot. It will be counted. When we come back, what happens if on election night we don't know who won?
This is Denver's Talk Station with Ross Kaminsky now. Tom Martino at 10, 630 KHOW, Denver.